All right, welcome to the Heare podcast featuring Jason Rogers or Jason Royas.
Jason Royas.
Jason Royas.
Thanks, guys.
Jason,
welcome.
You're our first official guest on the Heare podcast. How does it feel?
Feels great. Awesome.
Well, he also might be like I don't know. Jason's a large member of the team as well. So
yes,
he's a guest, but I'm sure he'll be on more frequently than just like a normal guest would be.
Yeah.
He just lives so far away in China.
Well, not that far, but 2.5 hours north is a little far, but
it's like
happy to be here.
Is it 2.5? I thought it's more than that.
Well, no, it's 2.5.
Oh, yeah.
Like, 2.5.
I swore it took us 3 hours to drive to your place.
No, it's about 2.5.
Well, from your house.
From your house,
from
it's
your
about
house
3.
That's right. It takes me 25 minutes to get here.
I can't believe that you come down here so often, and you don't complain. That's one of my favorite things about you, Jason, is that you don't complain.
Well, you don't hear it.
Well, it happens.
I complain plenty, but
that's something is that we don't hear it. So we appreciate that.
No, it's good. I'm happy to be here. My parents live just down the road here, and my brother lives close. We actually spent Thanksgiving down here. So, and then it's really not that bad. I throw in a podcast, so I'll be listening to ours once it launches. And
you are.
So it'll be good.
Yeah. Well, Jason's a huge member. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I remember the first time when we first met you, when Jess and I went to lunch with you. I'm trying to remember what that was. I have it on the blog.
Well, we'll get into that.
Well, I'm just saying, I just remember thinking, you came 2 hours just for this lunch?
Yeah.
I was so shocked that people do that.
Yeah. So we're going to go into Jason's kind of backstory, and then we're going to go into how he got involved in Heare and how he kind of became a member of like the founding team. And anything else?
Me likey.
I love it.
John likes.
I like you too.
Good structure.
All right. Well, who is Jason Rogers?
Who is it, Jason?
Who am I?
Who's behind that beard?
All right.
That's a nice beard.
You look really good with a beard.
You really do.
Appreciate that.
You look good without a beard too, but like the beard is just like chef's
like
kiss,
when I saw the picture when I went to your home and I saw the
Yep.
picture with the beard, I was like, oof.
Yep.
Jeez.
You're like,
ready
bring
to
it
chop down a
back.
tree.
I just I took November, the no shave November, as the opportunity to bring it back. So plus it's getting chilly up in Idaho. So no, thanks guys. Appreciate being on. So you want me to jump in?
Yeah.
From San Diego, California, born and raised.
From the very beginning.
From the very beginning. Just grew up about 10 minutes from La Jolla. So I grew up skating, surfing, just the whole like 90s Southern California vibe and lifestyle. My dad is from southeastern Idaho, which coincidentally pulled me back in my adulthood. But growing up as a kid and through high school and then even into junior college, San Diego was home. And served a mission. When I was 19, went to Montreal, Canada, Spanish speaking, and upon returning, actually transferred up to Utah State. So that was my introduction to Cache Valley. Oh
yeah, that's right. I couldn't remember that was your first.
Yeah.
Why you went up there? Okay.
Mm-hmm. So I went to college there, Utah State, and my wife Marissa and I got married. Junior year, and I'm skipping over that story there, but my wife and I have known each other.
There.
Yeah, we've known each other since we were 6 years old. So
cool.
We grew up in the same little group of kids in San Diego, and then after I got home from dated all through high school. And then when I got home from my mission, I was a little weird, right? I think we all kind of are. And then she was going through some stuff on her own, just kind of personal stuff. And so we weren't connecting there. And I was like, all right, well, I'm peacing out. I'm going to Utah State. So I went up to school, and then it took us about a year to get back together, and we did. Luckily, I'm grateful for that. And we got married in December of 2007. And from there, just moved back home to San Diego and just started working That was like right when the economy crashed in '08. I graduated that following spring in '09.
Great time to graduate.
Oh, it just was.
Welcome to the world.
Welcome to the world, right? I thought I would get an awesome job, right? The whole like, oh, you're going to put your 4 years in at university and you're going to just ride off into the sunset. Not happening, right? So I luckily had some experience in sales. So I got a sales job and I just started selling for corporate jobs, corporate company in San Diego called Cintas, and then moved into med device sales and just kind of worked my way up there and moved around San Diego for in Southern California for several years. And then from there, just really realized that I had this desire for entrepreneurship, but I just didn't know how to go about scratching that itch that I had. And I used to legitimately call myself a wantrepreneur. Like I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just did not know how to become one. And so I would work these jobs and I'd get like anxious and like I wasn't in the right spot and I just felt it and I knew it. I just didn't know how to get there.
Yeah.
So I ended up leaving a particular job, and while I did that, under the suggestion of my wife, she's like, why don't you talk to our friend Julie? She does some energy work. And I'm like, I don't know, it's kind of hokey, like I'm not really into that. She's like, just, you don't have to look at it as an energy session, just maybe she can help you kind of break through some limiting beliefs that you might have about yourself. And I was like, all right, fine. So I did. I called her up. Shout out to Julie Forbes in St. George.
Yeah, Julie. I don't know.
And I had a really good session with her. This is the second time I'd met with her in like a 5-year period, and she really helped me break through that limiting belief that like I was calling myself a wantrepreneur because I didn't feel like I could actually do it, and there were some generational patterns in my life and whatnot that were really strong, and I was believing things that were just not true about myself. So long story short, that really was transformational for me. Shortly thereafter, I got a hold of a book called The Power of Starting Something Stupid from Richie Norton, who is awesome, and we will have Richie on the podcast.
Yes, we will.
I would love to have him on. But Richie's
Mitch Whiting
awesome.
is going to help us with that.
Yeah, and I read his book. I read Richie's book, and it resonated so much with the way that I felt, that I had all these stupid ideas, but I didn't ever like have the courage to like really pursue any of them. And so something that he says in that book is to kind of take the pressure off yourself, or like to fool your psyche, is instead of calling them companies or businesses, just call it a project. Just call it a project. And so I just started a lot of projects, and some of them failed, and then some of them took off. And so,
what are some of the projects that you started that failed? Because I don't feel like I've ever heard any of those.
Yeah, I haven't either.
There was one. It was a company that I did like PR and marketing on behalf of like doctors' offices, trying to help them to get more patients. I was never a marketing guy, but I thought that I tried it and I sucked at it. So I tried to incorporate that into my medical billing company. And then what ended up taking off was the medical billing side. It wasn't the marketing. Like
Cool.
I started out, my whole website was about PR, marketing, and getting more patients in the door. And then I also just so happened to have a medical billing company that I was starting simultaneously. And I thought that the marketing thing was going to be the one that took off, and it wasn't.
It's funny. Well, because you got your degree in PR, right?
Yeah. I was a communications PR major.
I always forget that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So
that it started with just what you knew. You just started with what you
Exactly.
knew, and that's I feel like how it usually goes. Where you,
I just started with what I knew.
yeah,
And I think that was the frustrating part was I had been, you listen to these motivational speakers and stuff. They're like, follow your passion, like you got to do what you're passionate about. And so I tried that. I was super passionate about sports and I was super passionate about deal making. And so my favorite movie was like Jerry Maguire, right? I wanted to
Good movie.
I wanted to be a sports agent, but I sucked at the LSAT. So, and I wasn't going to go to law school. So the other route was go to business school and do like a sports management degree. Like,
Do you have to go to law school to be an agent?
You don't have to, but you're going to spend
Gives
a lot
you-
of money on an attorney looking over your paperwork, and might as well if you are the attorney.
So are most
then
sports agents, are most of them have been to law school?
I would say a good portion of them have, or at
Oh,
least in
I
the
didn't know that.
past, or they have a really good attorney on their team.
Interesting.
Right.
I didn't know that.
So I realized that law school wasn't my jam, but I got into the University of San Francisco sports management master's program, and I was stoked about it. And I was like, all right, this is it. Like, I'm going to get out of sales and I'm like going to follow my passion. And I remember going into class, and mind you, I was already making, I was low 6-figure, like, med device job. I was 26 years old. I was living in Moreno Valley, California. We were renting a house, but it was awesome, like super cool. My wife was training horses for a living. We didn't have any kids.
And you were making 6 figures at 26?
I was close. Yeah.
That
I was
would have been great.
I was like
Especially back
90
then.
to 100. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were doing pretty decent, right? So I went to class, and I'm in class, and like there's a bunch of kids that just graduated, and they're like, oh my gosh, are you excited to be in this class? Like, I heard the internship is you get to, work in the Clippers locker room and clean like Blake Griffin's jersey. And I was just like, where the freak am I?
You're like, I am not in the right place.
Like, this is not where I need to be. And then my professor was like, you're going to grind it out you're going to do well, and you're going to do all these internships, and you're going to put your time in, and eventually you get to the place where you can be. And I'm like, freak, man, I've already done that in another arena. I've been grinding in the sales arena for like years, and now I have a good trajectory. Why am I going to jeopardize that to go clean Blake Griffin's chonies? Like, no, I'm not going to do that. So I literally just got up after class, walked to the professor, and I said, thank you so much. I've realized I don't need to be here.
After the first class?
After the very first class. I realized I don't need to be here. I don't want to waste your time or mine. And with all due respect, like, I wish you well. I'm dropping out of the program.
Do you feel like in your life, like you've been able to realize things, like since I've known you, which hasn't been a super long time. I guess it's almost been a year though, kind of.
Yeah.
We'll get into that. But do you feel like you've always kind of realized quickly that it's not the route you want to go with something, and then you kind of change your path quickly, or has that always kind of been your
pattern?
I've always known that my gut speaks to me, like, and that this is, and I typically follow it. We'll share some instances where I didn't, and it's bitten me. And I think you guys kind of know that, a little bit of that story. But this particular instance, I knew it. Just like I've known some, most of the other ones, and I just followed it, and I never regretted it.
Well, that's how it's been kind of with Heare. I feel like I don't remember when the time was, but I feel like once you decided that like that you wanted to be a part of this, like it's like you were a part of it.
Totally.
It was never like, oh, I don't know. It was always like, I'm either in or I'm out.
Totally.
And but yeah, we'll talk more about that. So I've noticed that as like a personality trait of yours. But yeah.
A good pattern to have.
It is a good pattern, I feel like.
I appreciate it. It's something I've learned through time, and I've had to tell myself and remind myself, Like, here's an instance. I was driving 2.5 hours this morning. I had this strong impression to call somebody that I don't even know this person really. I just know them from the app, and they were initially a super strong, engaged member. And then they're not so much anymore, and that's fine. Like, totally cool with that. But I had this
on
impression.
The Heare app.
On the Heare app. And I had this impression to just call them.
Oh.
And I just left him a message. And we'll see if he calls me back. But anyways, I just decided a long time ago, when I have this gut feeling, or some people call the spirit talking to you, or whatever, for me, I know what that feeling is, and I follow it. So that story about that master's program, me walking out that day, it was just like, it was refreshing, because I want to go back to your point, John, where you say you follow what you're good at. I was good at sales. I'm good at it. And I didn't really enjoy it as much as I really wanted to. It wasn't my passion. So I was following what the world was telling me is what I should follow, which is follow your passion. But in all reality, I always try and tell young people to follow what you're good at, because it can become a passion if you do it right. And it's a good thing.
That was like me with personal training, because I love going to the gym, and I have since, I don't know, for the past 10 or 11 years. And I got to a point where I was like, my passion is fitness, obviously. Like, I go to the gym every day for a couple hours, sometimes more, sometimes 2 times a day, and I just loved it so much. And I was talking to Sarah, and I was like, I want to be a personal trainer. I want to be a nutritionist. And I love nutrition. And I started doing personal training. The first week of like being an official personal trainer, I hated it so much.
Well, I think there's something to, like, when you take your passions and start monetizing it, or when it becomes a job, then I think, at least that's happened for me, where it becomes less of a passion.
Yeah, well, it made me start to not enjoy working out as much.
Yeah.
Because it started to become my job, and then when I went to the gym, I was like, man, I've already been training people all day. I was like, I don't even like my stress outlet was now not really that stress outlet anymore.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was too much. And so I feel like I started to learn, I'm like, okay, like I need to like differentiate what's like a hobby and like what helps me personally, and then what I want to take like my career path into, because it can still be fulfilling.
Totally.
But I think that a lot of people do believe it's like, whatever you're passionate about, like make that, and it's like, that's just not true. A lot of times something that you're passionate about might not be a fulfilling route to make a career out of.
Correct.
I feel like that happens a lot.
It does. And I think a lot of people end up in a bad spot because of it. I just recently had that conversation with a cousin of mine, and it's just like, it sucks when you've invested a lot of time. Like, imagine had I gone to that master's program and stuck it out and been like, no, I'm just going to grind it out. Like, I started it. I'm going to grind it out.
I'm not a quitter.
I'm not going to quit, right? And I realize after I'm a bunch of money in debt, I just left a great career, and now I'm in one that I don't even really like, So anyways, so going back, so I just ended up continuing into sales, and then ended up becoming an entrepreneur, because I really felt like my energy after my session with Julie, and just like really focusing on telling myself, and not telling myself that I'm a entrepreneur, but actually believing that I could do something, and starting these projects, reading Richie's book. It just gave me the courage and a little bit of the, you know what, who cares? I'm just going to start projects and see what happens. And so I started a medical billing company. My cousin and I started, he started a medical patent brokerage, and then brought me in because I just knew a ton of like inventor surgeons and doctors and stuff. And we did well together on that, which allowed me to then leave my 9-to-5 job in 2020. And just literally 2 months before the pandemic hit. And just do entrepreneurship full time. So that's been the story up to where we met. I had a strong impression I need to sell my company about 2 years ago, and it took about a full year to actually sell. And then that brought on a whole set of challenges, and which I won't get into the details, but I think any entrepreneur has been through, who has created a company, who's had business partnerships, or who has had any kind of success in their life, they're going to have failures.
Yeah.
It's just what it is. You're going to have failures. Whether that's failed businesses, failed relationships, failed, opportunities. It's just going to happen. And so after the sale of my company, I ended up having one of the lowest periods of my life. And that was at about this time last year. And then into like January, February of this year. And I started using LinkedIn as like therapy.
LinkedIn, let's go.
Shout out to LinkedIn for being
Shout
a
out.
Sponsored
Exactly.
by LinkedIn.
Right.
Should be.
It's not.
It's not, but it should be.
Totally, because that's really how we all met.
This whole business.
For anyone who doesn't know, here it has been 100% formed solely by LinkedIn.
No
like
doubt.
literally
relationships,
all of us,
the team, the business.
Yeah.
everyone on our team, how it started with me and John originally, meeting Jason, meeting Mike, everything. And the majority of our community up to this point is
LinkedIn.
almost 100% LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So you were on LinkedIn.
Anyways,
Yeah, I was on LinkedIn. And I started just sharing my story of being an entrepreneur dad and overcoming, obstacles and challenges and bouncing back from failure, and just how I had a lot of regret too. Like, building a company is hard on not just you individually, but it's also hard on your family. And I know we all can talk about those things because we felt them, right? But I've felt that over the last 5 years building this company, and I had a lot of regret. Like, man, every picture that I look at with me and my family when we're on our trip, I have my stupid earbuds hanging out of my shirt. We're at Disney World, my earbuds are hanging out of my shirt. I'm in Hawaii, my earbuds are hanging out of my shirt. I'm like, what am I doing? I was on the phone all the time. Dinner, I was quick to just stuff my face and then jump back in my office and just crank out some more calls, or like my phone would continue to ring and I would just take it because I felt like I had to, that the business wouldn't survive. So I just talked about all of those things that were super unhealthy for me over the last several years, and realized that, one, I have an amazing wife who is super forgiving and who is willing to watch me learn and help me learn. So that was one thing that I was really posting about. And then Easter happened, and I had a really bad day. Our chickens got out, and my dog had a massacre on our chickens.
Easter of 2023?
This year, yeah. And I lost it. I straight up lost it. I picked up rocks, started throwing rocks at my dog. Like, I was like, I'd gone
One of the dogs we met?
ape. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a moment, and I'm ashamed to even say, but I got to a point where I was seeing red. I'd never gotten that point ever. And I missed the dog, hit my daughter's window, and it shattered.
What?
Ooh.
And at that point, it was like, dude, you got problems. You got to slow your roll. I just walked straight up to one of our guest bedrooms upstairs and just sat there and just started bawling. And I know I'm getting into super personal territory here, but
This is
Marissa comes in and she just, with all the love, but she keeps me accountable, which is amazing. And I love that about her. She just says, you're not yourself. You're not okay. You need help. And I love you. And those words were important because I knew she loved me still. I knew she was still in my corner. But if something wasn't going to change, then it was going to change. And I didn't want anything to change between my family, my relationship. She's the love of my life. And I realized at this point I need to make a massive change. So I got into therapy, and that day, you posted something on LinkedIn, John, that said it was about the Savior and how no matter how tough our obstacles are that we're going through, each of us can have an Easter morning for ourselves. That we can individually have our own Easter mornings and rise again from the terrible Friday night. And that just spoke straight to my soul, and I reposted it. And then you said, "Hey man, you didn't even comment right away. You just straight up went straight into my DMs and said, dude, thank you for sharing that. That was amazing post. How can I help you?" I'm like, "Bro, I don't even know you." You're like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good, man." Like, and I kind of shared some things with you, and you invited me to go to lunch with you. And from that moment, it was just like, I don't know if I manifested that, but I even told Marissa when I was going through all this crap, I need to network more with people in the Utah Salt Lake area because I feel their vibe and I feel alone up here. I've been running companies by myself, and I feel like there's people down there that I just need to meet. I felt this urge and this pull. You invited me to lunch. It just so happened that he's like, Justin's coming. I was like, dude, I kind of know of Justin because I interviewed his wife for a company I was starting, and we didn't end up.
Like back in December of 2022.
So that's how it was just crazy.
Well, yeah, I remember when John reached out to me, and
I remember sending a screenshot to you.
Yeah, you sent me a screenshot because I didn't remember. I'm terrible with names, but you sent me a screenshot, and you're like, "Hey, do you want to go to lunch with this guy, Jason?" I looked at it and I was like, I just talked to this guy on the phone like 4 or 5 months ago.
And so Jason was
and
talking
interviewed
with both of us separately, not knowing that we were.
No, because at the time you didn't know that me and John had started here together.
Yeah. Had no clue.
Well, I guess we hadn't started officially yet.
You just had talked about the concept.
Yeah, we were just teasing it.
And then when I went to lunch, you talked about the concept there. And then you guys invited me to go to Mike's retreat, which was like the next week.
Wait, so let's put all that stuff happened. That story of you throwing the rock and losing it, that was on Easter.
On Easter,
which was the exact same day John put up that post.
Yep.
And then we went to lunch with you probably like a week or two later.
The next week, yeah.
I did not realize. And then we went to then I invited you to I invited you to the retreat, right?
Yeah.
I invited you to Mike's retreat because there was like
one spot left.
Well, what was crazy about that? Well, I guess it's not crazy, but there was one guy who was coming and he bailed. Remember on Mike's retreat because Mike at Mike's this was when Mike was just doing solely his own retreats. Who's the other founder? But Mike wanted us to come to a retreat and try it out before we kind of like officially got things going with all that. And it was like full. And I remember Mike texted me or John and he was like, "Hey, if you guys know anyone, like there was one guy who like bailed." And for some reason you like instantly popped in my head, but I didn't know any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Like I just knew that you like briefly shared with us that you were kind of going through something, but I didn't know it was like, I've never heard that story before.
Yeah. I hadn't either.
Yeah, dude.
I didn't know all the details. I just knew you were not in a good place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was April 19th when we went to lunch for the first time. And then the retreat was the 28th. So it was...
Man, that was just like boom.
Boom, boom,
boom,
boom.
boom. I know. It was like... And after that point, it was like drinking from a fire hose. I felt like all the goodness that I've needed for so long was just happening. And I was like not quite ready for it.
Yeah.
So when you came home from the retreat... Like
let's go back to the lunch because I remember.
Oh yeah.
Lunch, you're right. I think just showing that contrast is interesting because I remember leaving the lunch and I didn't know what to expect really. I kind of showed up and I was like, "Oh, this is that Jason guy." Yes, okay. Like I hadn't put it all together.
We're like, maybe he'll give us money for him. That was mine and John's. Every time we went to lunch, it was always like, maybe this is a sign that we'll get money for her.
We're not that shallow for those listening, but we were
Well, I'd be
desperate.
lying. We still are. No, just kidding.
Yeah. 7 months later, and we're still looking for somebody to no. So I'm interested about your feeling going after that lunch, because I remember leaving and thinking, man, this guy's awesome. I remember, we were stoked that you even cared. You were kind of our first. Our first believer.
You were at that lunch.
Or one of them.
You were really one of the first people we told actually about Heare.
Yeah.
I think like on a very we were kind of talking about it on LinkedIn and going into like mental health, and I think we had the name. We did have the name because we had T-shirts and we gave you a T-shirt at lunch. And you were kind of the first person we shared the vision with, which you resonated with and loved. And I honestly can't remember though if we asked you at that lunch if you wanted to be involved. Did we ask you? I can't remember.
You did.
Yeah.
You're like, so
we were forward.
You were straight up.
Jeez.
And I wasn't ready for it. I think
we asked you to be on the advisory board because we didn't know.
Yeah,
we didn't know what anything meant.
We didn't know.
I don't think you knew what you were asking, which was is totally why I was like, I'm just gonna help you.
You're like, these guys have no idea what they're doing
to help you. So, yeah, leaving that lunch, I felt, I was so grateful. I was like, man, I just met two awesome guys that are creating something that I really need. And if I need it, I know there's a ton of other guys who need it. And I heard your story. You shared your story, Justin. And I just felt like a kinship with you guys. I don't know how else to say it other than that. I just felt this like, I don't know, this brotherhood with you guys that I really felt strongly about. And although I wasn't ready to like fully jump in as like a partner or, more official, I was like, I'm going to help as much as I can, just to do it, and, but this is your project, not mine.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, because you were starting to get into another project,
as
you like to call it, at that time too. And you were really excited about it.
Yeah.
Fresh Courage. And so we, I remember that discussion of like, we have our separate things, but I'd love to support you kind of a thing.
Totally.
But then we went to the retreat. 11 days later-ish, 10, 11 days later.
Mm-hmm.
And what was your experience like at the retreat?
Once again, another like transformational moment. I know I'll look back at that particular retreat, especially, and know that was like a hinge point for me and
for all of us, really.
Oh yeah, because that was mine and John's first retreat too.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much the day after Mike officially told us, like literally the day after Mike told us that he was good to be on board as the third founder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a hinge point for me. And I knew at that point, I talked to Mike and I was like, hey, look, at some point, I'd love to be able to help out more. I have a place up in Idaho. It might be a good place to do some more retreats. So just keep that in the back of your head. And
I remember the first time you sent us a picture of your property. I'm like, holy crap, that'd be so cool to do a retreat there someday.
Yeah.
And here we are.
We
a
did
month
it.
Out of having a retreat at your home. That was cool.
It was cool.
It was.
Yeah. So, and here we are today, right? We're growing, building, scaling. It's funny. People look at our brand that you guys have created and, it's like, it almost looks like it blew up, but in the foreground where we're standing, it's like there's a lot of work to do, and we know that, but I'm really excited because this is the first project / organization I've been a part of where it's been so purpose driven first, and it's not like, how are we gonna scale this financial model, which is important, but that's not the first discussion we're having.
No, that was the very last discussion. Me and John, I remember because I was similar. I'm not totally similar to you, but I remember I've always been very had this very entrepreneurship mind, and I tried starting 3 or 4 businesses before here in the past years, and I dropped out of school several times to try to do it. And all of those companies, I tried starting a gym, I tried starting a laundry service, I tried starting a male pedicure spa.
Oh, that's right.
Did I tell you about
That's
that?
super niche, dude.
Called Bugatti. I still think it's an
Wow.
amazing idea.
That's super
Maybe we'll
niche.
work it into here.
They actually do it in California.
Coming soon.
But I tried starting, and I think I tried starting another one. I did like a drop ship. Anyways, I did all these things. With all of those companies, I always, the very first thing I did was be like, okay, how do I make money with this company? That was my first thought with all of them.
You say that like it's a dumb thing, but most people.
No, I know.
Like
That was my that was
like
my
I'm
first
saying
thought.
it's funny that is sounds so silly to us.
Well, I don't know if it sounds
'Cause
silly,
it's
but
so
that's just how
it's so normal.
Yeah, so my first thought was like, how do I make money with these companies? And I figured out the revenue model and projections and all these things. And I'm in marketing, so I developed a marketing plan and all these things. And with Heare, it wasn't how do we make money with this? It was how do we help people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was that was what we talked about first.
Yep.
And we did not. Me and John. I think it was a week or so before we launched, and then we were finally like, so like how do we make money from this?
I still remember that phone call like, oh yeah, we should probably think about that.
Because we knew we wanted to do apparel, but we're like, well, it's hard to like it was already becoming apparent that this could have the potential of being a full-time job.
Yeah.
Because we were already spending so much time on it. And then it got to that point where it's like, okay, we like genuinely need to figure out kind of how we bring money in for this thing to help, us and to help the company grow and to help people and further the cause. And I remember feeling almost icky about it.
Yeah.
It was weird. Like I'd never felt that before in my life, but I remember when me and John were talking about money, even though it shouldn't feel that way, I remember us talking about money. And since it was so purpose driven and it was so like why driven of how do we help people and how do we help men not feel alone and to feel safe, also in bringing up money, it was like, oh, this feels kind of weird talking about it. But it was something that, obviously needs to be talked about because it is.
I still to this day feel that way sometimes.
I
know
too,
you guys know that.
or even when I use like business or marketing terms, like how do we scale this, or like or like what are our KPIs, or like anything like that. I'm always kind of like, oh, because it's so purpose and so mission driven, and it's always been that way from the start. And every time we're doing something, we always go back to the mission, we go back to the oath, first to be like, is this in line with what we're doing? And that's really how it should be. And I remember during this process, I was reading the book Start With Why by I don't know, say his name, Simon Sinek. Is it Sinek or Sinek?
Yeah, I've never known how to say it.
I don't know either. It's not one of my favorite books, but I was reading that book during the process of starting Heare, and everything in that book that I was reading, it was just like check. Like we were checking everything that book was talking about.
Totally.
And it was really cool to see that, like be reading that while we were getting this going. I mean, we still are getting it going, but
to go along with that, I know we all had a lot of conversations initially on how do we structure? Are we just going to be a nonprofit? Are we going to do a C Corp? Like, what are we going to do? John and I ended up planning to go to a Utah Business Week Founders Friday with Davis Smith just before he left on his mission. And
the founder and CEO of Cotopaxi.
Yes. I remember that day because John still talks about it to this day.
It was
forever.
super impactful.
Yeah.
It was in June. I want to say it was like one of his last things he did before he left to Brazil. And he talked about how he started Cotopaxi and how he feels that the purpose-driven company, the way that they structure the company, was able to do so much good because of the brand that they were able to bring to the forefront and allow people that were already going to buy outdoor gear. There's consumers in that market. But because he had a purpose behind it, he really felt that he could do good, a lot of good.
That was such a critical moment for me because I remember there were so many times sitting there listening to Davis, I would look over at you and like, are you feeling this?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, I'm feeling it now, just this rush of electricity, these just chills throughout your whole body. He just was speaking truth.
and like and
you felt it.
validation.
Yes,
I think,
and
for what we were
validation.
doing.
Very much.
Well, and you know, talking about this icky feeling that we get around money that we've had, I think that
You need to see my friend Julie so she can help you break through your limiting beliefs, John.
Well, the funny thing is, speaking of nonprofits, that was my background. A lot of it was the nonprofit world. And so I was trained to look at everything like, how can I do this as cheaply as possible, or as affordable as possible? And I would be given these small budgets and have to, you know, was expected to make the world out of these small budgets. And so that was my mindset of like, never really having these ginormous budgets to do things, and just money was never in excess. And there's a whole lot of other things there. But going to that, I really appreciated Davis's conversation around that. And he said, we have this belief that is self-limiting, that you either can do good in the world or you have to do well, like they're separate.
Right.
And he said, you can do well and do good.
Yep.
And for me, that was one of the pivotal moments for me where I thought, okay, if we can follow this model, and we talked about Cotopaxi, that's one of my things from the very beginning. Like, I want to follow a Cotopaxi model. I want to follow a Tom's model. I want to follow there were a few companies, Supreme, Fight the New Drug. Kind of. Like, there were lots of different models, both for-profit and non-profit, that I knew from the beginning I wanted to follow. And Cotopaxi was one of them. So it was so validating to hear that. But I remember feeling strongly about a few things during that. And one of them, and hopefully what I'm about to say ages well, but I remember him talking about female investors and having females on board from the very beginning as leaders. And they were the ones, he talked to, I don't know how many different investors.
Hundreds.
And the first like 7 investors or something, and I'm probably butchering it, but I think the first 7 investors were women. And he said a big part of it was because, going to our conversation about starting with why and purpose, he would go to these males and they would always ask, well, what are all the numbers? What are all the business statistics? You know, I want to see that it works first, and all these things. And then women, who are naturally more nurturing, they are more caring a lot of times. He would present them with this, and they're like, we have to make this happen. And it was all women to start, because they could see it. They could see the need for it. They could see that this was going to work. And so I have felt that way, that, you know, there's got to be a woman out there that has had a husband or a brother or a father who struggles with their mental health or something.
No doubt.
That they see why this is so necessary, and they will invest in us in order for us to be able to take this to the next level. I felt that for a while. You know, I could just be making something up, but
time will tell, right?
No doubt.
For any woman out there, I'm just kidding.
I want to get back to Jason, though, just out of curiosity. When you went to the retreat, obviously your wife Marissa knew that you'd been going through struggles, and it was very clear that you kind of were going through a lot. After the retreat and you came back, did she notice a difference in you at all? Or what was that experience like, going back after the retreat?
I believe she did. I shared with her a lot of what my experience was, and she could see that I was like really fired up about it and really excited, and she just held a really open space for me. Like, looking back, she's like, she could have reacted so many different ways. Like, dude, okay, I asked for my husband to get some help, and now he's going to men's retreats where he's doing breath work and like seeing things, right? Like, she could have like thought I was crazy, but she really was grounded in just giving me my space to have my process. And I think she was just kind of holding that space and like, let's just wait and see. And she was just I think she was supportive, but a little guarded, naturally. Yeah. And then I think she saw the change, and we went to Heare, and we met with John's family. It was awesome. Our kids got to play, and we had dinner. And John asked her, he put her on the spot and said, how do you feel about Jason being involved with Heare? And it was like, nope. like, here it is, right? I never asked her how I did. We talked about it, and she knew, like, she was okay with it, but she hadn't had to answer that question to somebody else. And when she said, you know what, at first I was a little apprehensive because of kind of some of the things we've been through, but I see what it's doing for him, and I think it's a good thing. And that just gave me the validation, right, that I needed, but also the permission that I needed as well to be able to continue to do this work, because I see it so much. And I see the guys that are joining our app, who are in our community now, who are going to these retreats, and I see a lot of the pain and suffering that I've been through in some of them. And now that I'm feeling like I'm on the better side of it now, able to have learned some really good coping mechanisms, and to find, like, regain my power, right? My powerful state, as a lot of our mentors like to say. It's been awesome. It's been really cool.
Well, one thing that I love about having you in such a central role with Heare is that you represent.
Did we ever go over what your role is?
Oh yeah,
president and chairman of the board.
Yeah,
yes.
I don't think we said that at the beginning.
Yeah, so we asked Jason a while back to be chairman of the board because we trusted him. We knew, going back to starting with purpose, we knew we needed somebody with the business acumen. Not that none of us do, but somebody that is in the thick of it, behind the scenes, has scaled businesses. We needed that type of business acumen, and so we knew we needed him for that. But one of the things that I love most about having you on the team is that you represent a certain demographic that I think a lot of times has a harder time seeing the need for it. Where to my knowledge, you haven't dealt with, like, clinical depression or clinical anxiety, a lot of different mental health issues. And that's something that we've struggled with messaging in the past.
Dude, I used to cringe when I heard the
Yes.
word mental health. I
Yes.
used to cringe at it.
Right.
I'm like, oh gosh, come on. These guys, seriously, suck it up. Come on, dude. You haven't done enough.
Yeah.
Get after it. And then it hit me.
Until it hits you, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the same way.
Yeah, and I love that you represent a lot of that demographic of because we have struggled to get certain people because of the messaging of surrounding mental health struggles and whatnot, that there's a place within Heare, within what we're doing, for men like that there are men that have said, well, I don't need this, I don't struggle with mental health, and you're like, well, it's more that we all have mental health, and we all want to have good health surrounding our mental state.
Right.
And so you've really helped, I think, a lot of people in that way to say, like, oh, okay, there is a place for me.
Totally.
Because I'm like Jason. And I think that's a lot of, any company or movement or whatever, it's people that see themselves in those that are at the front lines. They're more willing to join because they see that they see themselves reflected in us, in you. And so I've always appreciated that you represent that certain demographic in our community.
No, I appreciate that. I feel like as we continue to really see what the needs of our community are, I'm excited to continue to implement some things for that type of demographic that may not be at the bottom of the depths of despair, right? Like, we have a lot of those guys that need that, and we have a lot of resources for that. But we also have some really awesome resources for people that are just wanting to become, be better dads, be a better business person, be smarter, right? Be more engaged perhaps in the things, or more intentional with the things that they're pursuing in their life. And so I'm really excited about that kind of stuff too, that we're doing.
So we're running out of time, but one thing going off of that, I want to step away from Heare for just a minute.
Okay.
I want to know, we've lightly brushed on Fresh Courage.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Fresh Courage, where that came from,
Sure.
and what you're hoping to do with it.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So Fresh Courage is a slogan, if you will, that has been with me for quite some time. It comes from the hymn, the LDS hymn, "Come, Come, Ye Saints." And I remember singing it at a general conference. And I was watching general conference. I wasn't there, but I was standing up by myself in our apartment that we lived in. Marissa was traveling. I was alone. I felt, I was kind of a rough spot for me at that particular time. And I sang the song, and gird up your loins, fresh courage take. Our God will never us forsake. That just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was like, man, that's cool. I want to build a brand around that one day. And then 10 years go by, and I never did it. And then this year happened, and I'm like, this is the year I'm going to do it. And so, and it's evolved, but we're at it. What it is now today, Fresh Courage is a podcast that I will have launched by the time this comes out. And so you can find it on anywhere you find your podcast. It's just Fresh Courage with Jason Rogers. And I'm highlighting people who I believe have demonstrated fresh courage in their life. Because next to us, our neighbor, our friend, our person down the street, there's heroes walking among us all the time, every single day. And their stories can uplift us. They can give us either the fresh courage that we don't have and renew it, or they can keep the courage that we have fresh. And that's good. That's from my dad. I just stole that from him because I asked him, what does fresh courage mean to you, Dad? And he said that for me, it's always keeping the courage I have fresh by surrounding myself with good people.
I love that.
That's cool because a lot of times I think of fresh as like new,
totally,
instead of what has already exists.
Exists.
I love that perspective. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. So that's what Fresh Courage is today. My hope is that in the next few months that I can launch some courses that can help people to be able to get out of a particular place, either financially or career wise, right, to help them. But for now, it's a podcast sharing other people's experiences of overcoming challenges, obstacles, demonstrating fresh courage in their life to hopefully inspire the listener.
Oof, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you could leave the audience, the listeners, with anything, what would you tell them if they're listening for the first time, getting to know you for the first time, Heare Brotherhood, Fresh Courage, any of that? What would you want them to know?
I would say the most important thing when everything is against you is, and when everything is for you, right? The most important thing to remember is who you are. And if you can't answer who you are, then there is an answer for it, and you need to find it. And there's places you can find who you are. When I would leave the house as a kid, my mom would say, remember who you are. And that's really what brought me back to the retreats helped, the relationships helped, all of those things helped. But remembering who I am. And our good friend Nikki Covington brought that back. He reminded me of that concept, and I didn't realize that I had already exercised that concept before he brought it up. But I had a conversation with Marissa, my wife. We were outside feeding the horses, and I was just like, she's like, what is it with you? What is it with you that you have to compete in this game of entrepreneurship? What is it? And I was like, I have to get back to who I am, and who I am. I am a competitor. I'm a child of God. I am a competitor. I'm a winner, and I want to win. And as soon as babe, you know me. You've known me since I was 6 years old. Who am I? She's like, you're the confident, semi-cocky guy that wins. And I'm like, yeah. So I'm going to stop sulking. I'm going to stop licking my wounds of the things that I feel have, quote unquote, happened to me, but they're actually happening for me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's what I would leave with the listeners is remember who you are.
Love it.
Oof.
Jason Rogers, everyone.
Jason, thank you for
Thanks, dude.
being here with us today. We love you and appreciate all that you do for us personally, as well as for the Heare Brotherhood
Love you guys.
and the world. Love you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
love you, dude.